Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you've been enjoying the sessions. We've heard some wonderful views regarding the biotech sector. It's now time to take you to Manufacturing 4.0, India as the global hub for electronic manufacturing. Great pleasure to welcome our speakers today. Josh Foulger, Managing Director, Bharat FIH, which is a Foxconn technology group company. Dr. Ajai Chowdhry, Founder HCL, Chairman Epic Foundation. Mr. Rajeev Khushu, Chairman Board of Directors iesaonline. And chairing the session will be Pradeep Gupta, CMD, CyberMedia Group, and a TiE Governing Council member as well. Over to you, PG.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here to discuss this very important topic on Manufacturing 4.0, India as a global hub for electronic manufacturing. While there is a lot of discussion and debate on, the non-manufacturing part, the services part of the startup ecosystem, there are huge things which are now happening on the manufacturing side, and that is what a very eminent panel that I have today will be discussing. A very quick historical perspective. You know, in the 70s and the 80s, there was a lot of a lot of focus on hardware. That we must make the hardware ourselves. Computers must be made by us. Every device must be made. Televisions must be made by us, and so on. And in fact, in a lot of places, actually, that manufacturing was a forced manufacturing on the economy with a negative value add. But then gradually it was the software and the services part which started taking over. And India, unfortunately, then went through a period of disinvestment where we actually shut down a whole lot of electronic manufacturing that we had and completely started switching towards a software and a services kind of an economy. But then after that, it was realized that if you want to create jobs at all levels, you must have a robust electronic manufacturing. Uh, and therefore, the government first introduced the MSIP scheme, and then after that, we had the entire Atmanirbhar initiative. The Atmanirbhar initiative, I'll just talk a second about that, which is that the focus was not on that it must be Indian companies, but the focus was more on Make in India. That how can we ensure that whether it is an international company, whether it's an Indian company, how can we get manufacturing to be done in India, and how is it possible for us to create those jobs out of our soil? So the focus was more on Make in India. And then after that, we came up with the PLI scheme, and now the FAB policy. And to talk more about the FAB policy, I have this very eminent panel with me. However, our value add is still very low. It's no longer negative as used to be the case in the past, but it is very low value. But today we would also like to focus not just on what is it that the government should do and so on, but what are the enormous opportunities that are going to come for the entire entrepreneurs here, for the startups, because people attending TiEcon are essentially startups. So with that in mind, I will first request Mr. Rajeev Khushu. He is the chairman of IESA, Indian Electronic and Semiconductor Association. Rajeev, would you share with us, what was the need for us to have this fab, there was a lot of debate. Should we be fabless? Should we have a fab at all? And now that you've taken this decision, what are going to be the opportunities for startups around the fab, around the fabless, around systems on a chip SoC? So, would you like to share your view on that?
Thanks, Pradeep. Sorry, there's some technical issues, but I will try. I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but we can. You are very close to the device. Yeah, so perhaps a
Otherwise, I'm
little.
not able to. Yeah. So coming to the your question, see, when it comes to, I think there was definitely a lot of debate whether India should have a fab or we should continue to leverage the strengths what we have, which is around the R&D. But then, as we have seen in last few years, because of the geopolitical situation, I think fab is no longer nice to have kind of a thing. It is more like a necessity, not only for your own requirements, whether it's Atmanirbhar Bharat, or it is important from the strategic perspective. Imagine we don't have products which we can use to defend ourselves against our enemies. So I think so it's very important for the country to have uh, to have its own fab. Besides, we are the fourth largest economy in the world, so it's really unfair that the country of the size of India does not have a fab. So now coming to the numbers, if you see today, Indian semiconductor consumption is around $27.3 billion, and this will cross 20 this will cross $64 billion by 2026. So this throws a big opportunity not only for the startups in the fabless domain, but it throws up a big opportunity for the companies in the product domain. So the consumer electronics, whether it is products, IoT devices, products with mobile applications, wearables, and which basically cater to the needs of the local needs, whether of the country. I think there's a big opportunity for the startups to build products, and they can also be fabbed within the country. And we have already seen a couple of announcements in the fab, and I'm pretty sure we will soon see few announcements, big bang announcements coming in from the governments within few weeks of the fabs getting set up in the country. So I think there's a big opportunity, and the devices. If you ask me to pick up some devices, I would pick up devices like power semiconductors. I can pick up devices like processors or microcontrollers, which can be quickly built and which can be absorbed in the by the local market. So when it comes to the semiconductor product, when it comes to the overall ESDM products, I would pick up products like tablets. We have seen big opportunity, and particularly because of the pandemic, when the whole world got locked up, and and the only thing which kept us alive was getting connected to the net, and basically whether working from home or studying from home. I think there's a big opportunity for mobile devices, handheld devices, and I'm sure there are many. And I'm sure Dr. Ajay will talk about his initiatives in that space, and he's already seen some good progress in that. I think I leave it at there, and probably I come back to your
Right,
question in
right.
as
And
we talk
indeed,
about.
one of the persons who has used that opportunity very well, Josh, Bharat FIH, Foxconn's manufacturing here in this country. And today we are number two as far as mobile manufacturing is concerned. But you've been there in the past also, because I think Nokia also at one time. So this is the second time that perhaps we are doing that. My question to you is that what are the opportunities around that? Is it just a big money game and only the large companies can work in those areas? But around mobility, around the mobile manufacturing, what sort of ancillary industries, what sort of other opportunities for youngsters will come up?
Thank you, Pradeep ji, and it's definitely an honor to be here, and definitely it's an honor to share the stage with my Atma Guru, Dr. Ajai Chowdhry. So, good afternoon, everybody. And we are very happy to see India reaching a number two pole position in the last 5, 6 years in mobile phones. So, we are now the number two manufacturer of mobile phones. And it is a lot of effort coming from government policies and a lot of effort from the industry bodies to drive us in that direction. In terms of the opportunities which we have, regarding how to support and boost this ecosystem. Not just mobile phones, but but I think as Rajeev said, mobile phones is a good starting base for IoT devices on all other electronic devices. So whatever sort of categories we enter can be very quickly horizontally scaled for sort of to support other devices as well, right? So I think, but mobile phone is a big enough space to jump in, and so that we can use these services in other devices as we go forward as a country and as businesses. So the five opportunity areas, five buckets, which I say is number one is EMS, the electronic manufacturing service. Companies like us are in that space. And of course, there is a range of companies. There are large companies like us, and then there are smaller companies as well there. And it depends on the particular vertical business you're supporting. The second category would be design, ODM services. And this is a little bit technical, challenging, because people think it's only design. Design is only one bit of that. I think you have to really productize it, bring it to mass production in an EMS provider or in a manufacturer. So I think it's a pretty involved thing, but it's something which the country will have to take. Design clearly is a very big part of my definition of Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Right.
The third is components, and this is tier one, tier two category. I mean, a smartphone has anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 components or more. Large categories. So clearly, components are a massive opportunity as a country. A lot of technology which goes into that. A big space. The fourth area is after sales service. Depending on different channels, different customers need different types of after sales services. This can be opportunities for people who have the sort of the intent and the experience in this space. Last but not the least, and this is I think one of the pivotal pillars in Atmanirbhar Bharat for me, is equipment, jigs, fixtures, testers, and all those things. I think it's a big space for companies to get in. I kind of broadly call that as Indian machines. How would you do that? So these are the five categories, Pradeep ji, which I think are opportunities.
No, absolutely. And I think, around large manufacturing like you have, a lot of these opportunities will arise. One person who has utilized the opportunities in this space, you talked about EMS, is Dixon. Unfortunately, Sunil Vachani could not make it. He was slated to be part of this panel, but in few years, he has actually created 6,500 crore worth of manufacturing, and today is a ESDM unicorn. Ajay, increasingly electronics is becoming a DNA. Gone are the days when you will just have software solutions. You will have IoT. You will have the cloud. You will have sensors that will be used and so on. So it's affecting each and every industry today. If you look at a car, if you look at a healthcare device, you look at whatever kind of a thing, you will find that there is an electronics DNA in it. So what is the impact of all this, not just on ESDM, but on all other industries?
Thank you, Pradeep. Basically, electronics is a meta resource, and I've always used that language for a long, long time. And you can't find a single product out there which doesn't have electronics. So electronics has an impact on everything that you are trying to do today. And for startups, there are opportunities in many, many ways. Number one, they can develop accessories around any of the products that are out there. So let's say that Josh talked about phones. There are a huge amount of accessories that are around the phone, and therefore they can definitely look at some of those accessories. The other areas are that for startups where they can actually get onto is add-ons to the phone, for example. There are so many types of add-ons that can be done today. You can convert a phone to a medical device, and you can add a whole bunch of products around it to make it a medical device. So there are so many opportunities that are there, and you add that with software and apps, then you suddenly have a complete ecosystem that you can develop around the phone itself. Now, with the phone, as you see, the same ecosystem of the phone can be utilized for making tablets. The only real big difference is the screen. So with the kind of ecosystem that is getting set up in India due to domestic and exports that are happening in the phone, you have a great opportunity to create more and more products like tablets. Now, tablets, for example, in this country has a huge market, because if you look at just education, there are 25 crore students in just government offices, government schools. So that's a huge opportunity. So actually, around electronics, around what you can do with semiconductors, there are a lot of opportunities. But within semiconductors, the opportunities specifically for startups would be to become fabless companies. And the government has now come up with a design-linked incentive scheme, where startups can actually pick up a specific design for a specific chip and get 50% benefit from the government. And if they actually get it manufactured, then they get PLI benefits also along with, the product that they have developed. So that's really where the bigger opportunities are likely to be. In India, there are a lot of people who have great VLSI design capability, and I think that is where you will see a big explosion of maybe hundreds of fabless companies, which can all be, created by startups.
You're right, Dave. In the chip design space, there are a number of individuals, but they've been working for foreign companies, and a lot of them now I see them branching out and so on. But Ajay, a follow-up question. You have formed EPIC, which is for electronic production. So, what really is the thought behind EPIC, and what do you hope to achieve?
You see, what I've observed over the last 15 odd years is that there were a large number of Indian brands that existed in electronics, whether they were TVs or phones or computers or tablets or whatever. Literally, in the last 10-15 years, a lot of those brands have died. And the reason for it is that the huge influx of global companies who have come and, picked up the whole market. Now, I think what is happening is that with PLI and DLI and all these new schemes, there is a great opportunity for Indian brands to be recreated. Now, you mentioned very early in your talk that we didn't have enough value addition earlier. And Josh also specifically talked about the design piece. Now, what is today happening is that with PLI, you are having breadth of manufacturing happen in a very big way. And we are seeing the results of that in domestic manufacturing and exports also. But what is not happening is depth in manufacturing. And that is where EPIC wants to come in to create a model by which more and more brands can start to look at the depth of manufacturing. Design will be a very major element, and then designing and working together with the local component ecosystem, so all the local components can be utilized in creating products. So what we would like to see in the country is to see Indian brands come up, design in India, and when they design in India, they will actually want to buy components in India and will also like to source semiconductors from India. Now, if you want to set up a semiconductor plant, who are going to be our customers? The customers are not going to be the global companies who are already have their sources of semiconductors. You need to have domestic companies who will create the market for semiconductors. And that is really where Epic wants to be a enabler. And we want to really get design companies, manufacturing companies, service companies, etc., all together. And critical thing I would like to mention to all startups is please start to look at a environment where you don't use a throwaway culture. Create products that can be repaired right down to component level. And then you'll create more and more jobs in after sales service all over the country.
Great. So, Rajiv, as Ajay says, design is where we can really do a lot of value add. So, can there be, design hubs that can be created where, just as we have incubators and so on, or for software and so on, can we have such like design hubs being created? Is there any thinking that IESA has on this?
See, a couple of initiatives. See, I think one was basically a software SAFAL, which is Semiconductor Fabless Accelerator. And then we have a couple of other initiatives where you are also being a part of Electropreneur Park, whether it is in Delhi or in Bhubaneswar. The focus of these is basically design and getting created in the country, IP is getting created in the country, IP is getting registered in the country. So when you have these companies having their IPs in the country, and they will naturally pick up devices, they will naturally pick up products which are available locally, so that they are less and less dependent on the global supply chain. So this will ensure that our ecosystem grows. So I think there are many initiatives, like we have been talking to the finance ministry on creating a silicon city in Bangalore, because what has after the pandemic, what has happened is the semiconductor is growing very rapidly. Not only India growing from $27 billion to $64 billion in few years, globally also we will soon touch $1 trillion. Last year alone, the semiconductor which got added into the market was more than $100 billion. So I think India needs to leverage the strength what it has, which is the semiconductor design, so that they can start building the products. And the government, on the other hand, has to create those facilities, whether it is silicon cities or ESDM cities or electronic cities, where people build the products, leverage the infrastructure which government is creating, the common infrastructure which is getting created there, and the startups can leverage both and make products out of India. And that will take us to the next level, which will be design-led manufacturing, and that will basically create jobs, and that will have more stickiness. See, today, one figure which I wanted to share with you, out of this $27 billion of semiconductors, only $2.5 billion are procured in the country, because the main reason for that is because they are not designed, the products are not designed in the country.
Right.
They're designed in outside, so they get kitted there. That's it. I'll stop there, and you can.
Right. Yeah, but very, very great point that not just design hub, we need to have a city, where we can put the whole ecosystem together. Josh, what are the steps that need to be taken to ensure that there is a higher value add? And can we actually become a, a global supplier of mobile phones? As has happened elsewhere in the world, that manufacturing keeps on shifting wherever incentives are. So I hope, is there a way by which we can sustain it so that the industry remains here in India?
I think it's a great question, Pradeep, and I think so. My answer is yes, and yes, and yes. I think, and it comes from the confidence, with the government. See, the government has shifted the mindset. They understand that manufacturing is very important, and so it started with Make in India 7 years ago. And now with Atmanirbhar Bharat, the mindset is really saying that, okay, we want to be truly self-reliant on all of these sort of areas of competency and really moving the entire population into them. So the mindset of the government, I think, the number one driver. And you see that in all the initiatives, and it's really top down. You start this with Modi ji, taking an anchoring position on all of these things. And I think so that gives industry motivated people like us, to really drive this, forward. I think so. Number one is, I think the mindset. Number two is really our demand in this space, not just in India but export market. This is a massive industry with a lot of convergence opportunities. 3 trillion, and beyond. This growth, this is going to be a growing sector with multiple growth opportunities across a spectrum of capabilities. So clearly there is an impetus. The third is India really has, I wouldn't say an unlimited source of people, but yes, we do. I mean, across the categories of skills needed, right from associates, to one of my favorite is people who are the technicians, the guys who get their hands dirty fixing machines, the guys who study a diploma, the engineers, and all the way to advanced degrees and PhDs who will start to really use their PhDs in India and not elsewhere. And we have all of these skill sets. So I think these are the three reasons, Pradeep ji, I feel that it will be here. Now, will this stay in India and not move geographically? I think it's really up to us as a country. And again, it depends on the government. It depends on the longevity of the thought process with the government. It depends on how we are able to manage the demand, and of course us as individuals on saying how do we want to continuously be innovative to sort of sustain this so it doesn't move to other geographies as the water flows.
Wonderful. But I like that yes, yes, and yes. I think that is the sort of a spirit that is something that we definitely need. I come towards the end and I will just request for very, very quick answers to three, very quick questions that I have for of each of you. Starting with you, Josh. What are changes? 30 seconds only. Okay, what two changes are required to change the physical infrastructure in India?
I'll take, okay. I'll stick to 30 seconds. I think number one, I think, is the mindset of the government that infrastructure is needed. I think it's not, you don't need to fix everything, right? Just point to point infrastructure, logistics, point to point infrastructure, isolated places. If you're able to fix them, I think it'll be fabulous. Power, I think you need to have predictable power. I think would be a thing. The third thing I'll quickly add, I'll say, is that the mindset of the people. I think clearly we as a country, we need to say that, okay, working in a factory, working in operations, working on machines is something of a pride and joy instead of sitting in front of a computer doing software. Nothing wrong with software. Electronics has so much embedded software, but I think we should also do physical things and be proud of it. So.
Sure. I think we seem to have lost Rajeev. So, Ajay, my quick question to you: $400 billion. This is a figure that. Oh, Rajeev, you're there. So, $400 billion. Which year do we think we will be $400 billion?
You're asking me, Pradeep?
Yeah, Rajeev.
I think within 10 years from now, we will touch and cross $400 billion.
400 billion. Wonderful. And Ajay, when do we start seeing ESDM unicorns? What's your in this 10 years? How many unicorns in ESDM?
I don't know whether I want to call them unicorns. I would prefer to call them people with high volume and high revenue. I don't want to go towards the valuations, because valuations come and go. So what I would like to see is Indian champions, maybe 10 of them, with 10,000 crores each in the next 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to close this session with a request to the TiE team that perhaps we should have a much longer dialogue on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Thank you very much.
Are you able to put me? Thank you, Mr. Gupta, Rajeev, Khushu, Dr. Ajai Chowdhry, and Josh Foulger for this very informative session. Our next session